Hi, it's Lucy, and today I'm here to do a video on my favorite books of 2019. So this reading year was not the best reading year, quality-wise. I think there were a lot of books that I enjoyed. There were more books than I expected that I did not like. You can find out about those in my worst books of 2019 video, which will be linked down below. I only read 3 books that I gave 5 stars in 2019, and one of those books was a reread. I talk about that a little bit in my 2019 stats video. This is just me self-promoting, in case you're wondering. That's the whole video. I'm kidding. I had a harder time coming up with this list than I have in years past. This list has 6 books on it, which is less than I have on my worst books of the year list, which I think is not usual. Usually I think it's even, or I have less worst books. I could just be making that up though. I haven't watched those videos for years. So yeah, that's just a little bit of my thoughts on it. This list is ranked because I felt like it. And the ranking means that the last book that I talk about is my favorite book of 2019. But I obviously didn't enjoy all these books. Other books that I rated 4 stars and 3.5 stars I enjoyed on Goodreads. You can find out about those via Goodreads, my wrap-ups, etc. And if you look at my Goodreads and see like the ratings for these books don't quite match up to the ranking, it is what it is, okay? Sometimes I give books different ratings based on like quality / enjoyment, but when I do this list, I mostly base it on enjoyment. Without further ado, these are my favorite books of 2019. First, we have On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. This follows Bree, who lives in Garden Heights, the neighborhood stars from In the Hate You Give. So this is sort of a companion. We don't see Star, but her events are kind of mentioned. Bree wants to be one of the greatest rappers in the world, but she has big shoes to fill in that her late father was an underground hip-hop legend, and so she's trying to come out of his shadow. Things take a turn when her family, which has always struggled, is now struggling even more due to her mom losing her job, and now Bree feels even more pressure to try and make it as a rapper. She ends up going viral over a song she writes after she is treated incredibly unfairly by the security guards at her school. And she wants to take this opportunity to like really jumpstart her career. However, the people around her are worried about the image that she's giving off with particularly that video that went viral, because they don't want her to be marked as just another angry black girl. And so we follow Bree as she's dealing with all of these things. And Angie Thomas did it again. I really enjoyed this story. I find that Angie Thomas just really has a way of capturing what it's like to be a teen, and I was here for it the whole time. I had such a good time reading this. I laughed, I teared up, and felt a full range of emotions while reading it. This is sort of a meandering contemporary, which is kind of like my favorite genre of contemporary, where it's not just one thing, but we just follow a character over this portion of their life. I appreciated all the things that were discussed in this book, and I thought they were discussed well without going overboard and turning Bree into a one-dimensional character whose only thing is the struggle. Yes, she's dealing with her mom struggling with money, potential gang violence, and the racist way that her school has been treating her and other black and brown students, but she's also a teenage girl who's studying for the ACTs, dealing with a crush on a guy, dealing with just regular friendships. And so I loved it for that. I loved how it just combined everything and really normalizes people. The 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This story is kind of complex and hard to explain, so please forgive me if I butcher it. This story is set in a fantasy world where periodically the world ends via natural disaster. These times are called seasons, and nobody knows when they're going to happen, what's going to cause them, but when they do happen, there is cat hair on my mouth. But when they do happen, people just try their best to try and survive, and whoever does survive has to work on rebuilding society using previous knowledge from previous societies. And this has happened many times. So the current society we're in, everything about the world is set up to accommodate this because the world is trying to kill them. Also on this world are people known as Orgons. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but basically these people are kind of like earthbenders. They can control the earth, and you would think that since the earth is constantly trying to kill everybody, these people would be highly revered, but they're not. They're actually persecuted a lot. Most of them are killed by their like villages or anything, and those who aren't killed are sent to a place called the Fulcrum, which is a place where they train and restrict them while they're growing up and learning how to use their skills, and they're used to try and keep the earth at bay, I guess, because they're trying to kill them. So at the beginning of this book, we follow 3 perspectives at the beginning of a new season that is about to start or is starting. One of them is a woman who comes home to a scene where her husband has killed her son and has kidnapped their daughter. and she has to go and try and find them to save her daughter. Another perspective is a girl who has just arrived at the fulcrum and begins her training, and the other perspective is a woman who has been at the fulcrum for a while. She grew up there, and she has a new task that she needs to do. And so we follow all these perspectives that the world is ending, and it is so interesting. This is on this list because it is so different from everything I've ever read. I was enthralled with the story the entire time I was reading it, even though I was confused at times, but I was confused in a way that made me want to keep reading rather than being so frustrating that I was like, I'm done. The setting of the story is so rich with its history that it's worth reading just for that alone. The characters are super interesting and you really want to learn more about them, and there are side characters who are also really interesting, and I hope that there are more of them in the second and third books. N.K. Jemisin makes it a mission? What is the word I'm looking? A priority. N.K. Jemisin makes it a priority for her characters to be people of color, and in this world, they are described as people of color. Their hair is described, I'm not sure if it's woolly, but like my hair, you know? Just everything seems to have been like so carefully imagined, and yeah, I just really enjoyed reading it, and I'm excited to keep on reading the second and third book. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I do have a Taylor Jenkins Reid book on this list, like every other booktuber. This follows Daisy Jones and the 6 members of the band The Six, and is told in an interview style. In the 70s, Daisy Jones and the Six made an incredible album that was really putting them on the map. It was super popular, and the music was really good, according to critics and everyone, and they did that one album and then they disbanded. And this book documentary is the story behind that, how they met and why they left each other. I think that this can be a polarizing book on BookTube due to the way that it is written. Like I said, this is told in an interview format, and it is just dialogue. It's just the person who's being interviewed at that time just talking. And we actually don't even hear from the interviewer, which is different from the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I couldn't remember the title for a second, which I actually liked about this more. Not that we're comparing, but I am comparing a little bit because they're the only Taylor Jenkins Reid's books I've read. The number one reason is they don't like the interview style because it is a lot of dialogue. I didn't mind it. I did listen to the audiobook since I had heard that was the way to go with this book, and I loved it. I can't say that the physical book would have been worse because I haven't even looked at it, so I don't know. But the reason this is on this list is that all of the characters just felt so real to me. I was so engaged in this story, and I just had such a good time reading it. There was a reveal at the end that I didn't love, but almost the entire story, I was just so enthralled. I wanted to hear more about Daisy Jones. I wanted to learn more about Karen. I loved Karen, by the way. I wanted to know more about Billy and the other members of the band, and I just wanted to hear like their side of the story. I was so interested in this band that didn't exist, and I love that this book made me feel that way. Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This takes place over a dual timeline, and the first timeline takes place in the 1930s, right after Albert Ellingham has opened up his school, Ellingham Academy. The school is meant to cultivate the world's greatest thinkers, artists, and inventors. And Albert Ellingham is an incredibly rich man, which is how he was able to open up this school. Shortly after the school's opening, Ellingham's wife and daughter are kidnapped, and the only clue is a letter that was ominously signed by Truly Devious. In the present day timeline, we follow a girl named Stevie Bell, whose thing is like solving mysteries. She wants to be an FBI agent when she gets older, and she is accepted into Ellingham Academy. And when she gets there, she wants to be the one to solve the case of Truly Devious because it continues to go unsolved. They never truly find out who kidnapped his wife and daughter. However, when history starts repeating itself, Stevie finds that she wants to solve the mystery more than ever, and she's wondering what she's gotten herself into. This is on this list because it was such a good series starter. I haven't been so enraptured in a series in so long. I love it for that. I found the mystery to be so captivating, so interesting. I just like ate the story up. I thought it was a fun read despite the murder. And I ended up reading the second book in the series the next month, which I hardly ever do. I usually go months without reading the next book in the series. But the last time I remember feeling so engaged in a series is the Queen of the Tearling series. I was like super obsessed with it when I was reading it, and I read all 3 books like months back to back. And I would have done this with this series, but the 3rd book doesn't come out until February. So I will definitely be one of the first people to read it in February though. We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. This follows Marin after her grandfather dies. Her grandfather was her sole caretaker because her mother died when she was young, and so this hits Marin incredibly hard, and she decides that she really can't deal with it, and so she just runs away, goes to school early. She lived in California and her college is in New York, so she just decides to leave and head there 2 weeks early when that happens. And she doesn't tell anybody what happens, and she doesn't confront it at all. And so now it is winter break, and her best friend, who was one of the people she didn't tell, has decided she's coming to visit her. And so now Marin has to confront all the things that she left behind. I don't want to say too much about this. This is a short book, but it packs a punch. I teared up multiple times while I was reading this. Everything about the story, the writing, there are some really good quotes in this. Marin's relationship with her grandfather, her thoughts about her mother, because like I said, her mother died when she was young. Her relationship with Mabel. Is it an FF romance? I'm not really sure I would say it's that, but Marin is a woman who loves women. And all of that combined into this like great, wonderful book. And I just really, really appreciated it. It really tugged at my heartstrings, which is what I needed at the time. So, and the number one book on this list is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Nobody's surprised. I love this book. I've been talking about it in all of my end of the year videos where it's appropriate. You know what I'm trying to say. But I love this book. Since this is the second book in a duology, I can't really tell you any plot points or anything about this book, but just know the duology is set in the Grishaverse, where there's certain people who are able to harness certain abilities, and it's kind of magic basically. And this is also set after the events of the original Grisha trilogy. And basically the first book starts off, in the first book we follow 6 people who are all brought together for different reasons in order to commit the heist of a lifetime. And this is obviously after that. I don't know how to put it more simply, but I loved this book. Like I said in my series I finished in 2019 video, this is like the perfect duology for me. I loved how the characters were just expanded upon in this book, and I was in love with each and every one of them. I actually shipped characters in this series, which I hardly ever do anymore. Jesper and Wylan 5 ever. And the story itself was action-packed and I couldn't put it down. I just love this so much, especially considering that I read this in February and I still love it so much. I'm considering rereading it pretty soon, which is unheard of for me rereading a book that I read a year ago. Not me. I don't do that. It's just so good. Look at the red sprayed edges. These are all my tabs. It's not a lot, but I don't tab that much anyway. It's such a good book. If you haven't read this duology already, read it. Should you read the Grisha trilogy before it? I think you should, because honestly, that's probably one of the failings of this book. I was able to look past it because the other books did the world building for me, but this book doesn't have a whole lot in the world of world building. This is more world expansion. You learn a lot about the Grisha in the first series, and there's less of this in here. So if you don't care about world building, like I said, the characters are like most of the reason why I love this book, then you should just read it and we can cry about it together. Okay, so that's it for this video. Those are my favorite books that I read in 2019. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any opinions about any of the books that I talked about in this video, leave them in the comments down below. Did you also love these books? Did you also read them in 2019 or in years prior and love them? Or if you hated them, let me know in the comments down below. I would like to know why you hated them and we can have a respectful discussion. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post a new video. Be sure to check the description box for my social media. I have Twitter and Instagram. You should follow me on Instagram if you want to see pictures of my cat. He's very adorable, and I'm not just saying that because I own him. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.